There is a silent space, a breathless moment between the final heartbeat and what follows. It is not darkness. It is not light. It is the unknown, shimmering with truth. And yet, it is deeply familiar, as if your soul has been there before. In that instant, all identities fall away. Your name, your story, your fears, and gone. What remains is pure awareness, unbound and limitless. This is the realm described in the mysterious book that few have read but many have sensed in dreams and in deathbed whispers. A book not of ink and paper, but of vibration and remembrance. A book that reveals not theories, but energetic certainties. When we die, the mind no longer filters reality. We perceive directly, not with eyes, but with consciousness itself. The body is left behind like a cocoon, and the soul lifts, light as breath, drawn toward frequencies it most resembles. This is not judgment. This is resonance. What you loved, what you feared, what you held sacred, these shape the pathways beyond. There are layers, luminous and fluid, realms where time dissolves and the soul recalls its origin. What you thought was death is not an ending, but a realignment with the great field of intelligence from which you came. It is a remembering, a melting into what has always been waiting. And yet some remain lost, souls who cling to form, to unfinished stories, to unresolved echoes. They hover close to the living, not out of malice, but confusion. They do not realize they are free. The book speaks to them too if they can listen, if we can help them listen. This chapter begins with a simple truth. Death is not departure. It is expansion. Si estas palabras ya tocaron tu alma, suscríbete al canal y comparte en los comentarios. ¿Qué vibración sientes ahora dentro de ti? Ahora vamos continua. As we cross the threshold, the soul is received not by gates or judges, but by resonance. This truth is both liberating and humbling. You are not taken somewhere. You arrive exactly where your vibration aligns. There is no mistake in this. The universe is precise, sacredly mathematical in its design. What you carry within, love, guilt, forgiveness, resentment, radiates like color and sound in the subtle realms. These are not emotions as we understand them here, but fields of frequency that shape the very landscape of the afterlife. To a soul unburdened, the transition is effortless, luminous. To a soul entangled, the passage may feel like fog, confusion, or delay. This book speaks of realms layered like veils of light. Some pulse with learning, where beings gather in silence to witness the patterns of their past lives, to understand not from regret, but from expanded clarity. Others are realms of rest, where energy rebalances and dissolves old constructs. And beyond still, realms of light so pure they have no form, only vibration. These are not heavens in a religious sense, but harmonics of remembrance. The soul does not travel in straight lines. It expands in spirals, awakening through memory, intention, and vibration. In the first moments after death, many souls are met by familiar presences, not to comfort but to mirror. These beings reflect back to us the truth we have hidden even from ourselves. There is no deception here, only the luminous honesty of consciousness revealing itself. Each frequency teaches, each dimension offers a mirror, and slowly or suddenly the soul begins to remember that it was never separate, never exiled, that even in its most painful incarnations, it remained a thread in the great tapestry of divine awareness. The question is not what happens when we die, but what we carry with us when we do. There is a precise moment just after the final breath when the fabric of illusion begins to unravel, not violently but gently, like a mist lifting at dawn. The ego, no longer anchored to the senses, dissolves like salt in warm water. The soul begins to see not through eyes, but through pure perception. Time loosens, seconds become spirals. The linear story of life unthreads itself, not as a movie reel, but as a felt wave. Every moment, every emotion, every choice, simultaneously accessible, as if all had been happening at once. This is not judgment. This is revelation. Not from a God outside, but from the self within, expanded and luminous. The mysterious book speaks of this moment as the great softening. It is when resistance fades, and the soul becomes transparent to itself. In this space, clarity is not imposed, it emerges. One sees the threads between cause and effect, the invisible consequences of kindness and cruelty alike, not as punishment but as understanding. What once felt random is revealed as choreography. The people who hurt you, the ones you loved, the choices you feared, all were mirrors. All were part of the soul's curriculum, designed with such complexity and grace that only now, beyond the veil, can you truly understand. And then comes a choice. Not in words, but in vibration. Some souls move on, into realms of integration and peace. Others, still curious or attached, remain close to the living, drawn to familiar frequencies. They are not trapped, but they are tethered to longing, to regret, to identity. In this phase, we see not what we owned, but what we gave, not what we achieved, but what we became. Death does not erase who we are, it reveals it. Beyond the moment of unraveling lies a vastness, not a place, but a field. The book calls it the mirror space. It is where consciousness encounters itself without distortion. Imagine a reality where every thought, every belief, every emotion you carried is made visible in subtle form, reflected not in judgment, but in energy. Here, nothing can be hidden. The soul stands in the presence of its own vibration, raw, intricate, sacred. It is not a reckoning, it is a remembering. You see how each act of love expanded your field, how each act of fear contracted it, how your presence touched others in ways you never realized. This mirror space is not punishment, and yet it is not easy. To see oneself so fully can shake even the most awakened soul, but the shaking is part of the liberation. There is a tenderness to this unveiling, a sacred compassion from the fabric of the universe itself. It holds you as you watch yourself, not with shame, but with truth. Some souls move through this space swiftly, their fields coherent, luminous. Others linger, entangled in emotional echoes. Not because they are forced, but because they are not ready to let go of what they believe themselves to be. There is guidance here, though it does not come in words. Beings of light, vibrational presences often appear, not to tell, but to attune. They radiate frequencies that help the soul stabilize, harmonize, remember. They do not impose, they invite. As we reflect, we begin to understand that healing continues after death, that growth is not limited to form. The soul is not a finished thing, it is ever unfolding, like music becoming more complex and beautiful with each breath of eternity. And so, we begin to ask, if this is what follows death, what then is the true purpose of life? After the mirrors, when the soul has faced itself and softened into truth, a stillness emerges, profound and luminous. This is known in the book as the Temple of Rest, but it is not a temple in the way we know it. It is a state, a sanctuary of frequency, a place where the soul does not think, does not strive, it simply receives. In this realm, the burdens of incarnation fall away. The noise of identity is silenced. What remains is essence, pure and receptive. The soul, like a field once torn by storms, now lies open beneath starlight, absorbing subtle waves of healing, recalibration, and remembrance. Colors here do not merely shimmer, they sing. Light flows like breath. Time does not move forward, it expands outward like rings on still water. Each moment is a whole. Each silence is alive. This phase is crucial. Many believe that death brings instant clarity, but the soul, like any living system, needs integration. Just as we sleep after deep transformation, so too must the soul enter this sacred pause, not to escape, but to reweave. In this rest, we are not alone. The book speaks of presences, soft, radiant, almost imperceptible, that tend to the soul like gardeners. They do not ask, they do not teach, they simply emanate coherence, inviting the soul back into its original harmony. Here, past lives are not reviewed. They are felt as textures within the soul's current. There is no linear narrative, only resonance. And through this, the soul begins to recall its deeper calling, the thread that led it through lifetimes and now pulls it gently beyond. In the Temple of Rest, we begin to realize healing is not a destination, it is a rhythm, and death, far from being the end, is part of its sacred dance. Within the Temple of Rest, a subtle stirring begins, not of urgency, but of readiness. The soul, now quieter and more whole, begins to feel a pull, not a command, a whisper. It is the spiral of return, a movement that calls not backward, but inward, toward deeper integration, toward purpose beyond memory. This spiral is not a reincarnation cycle as we often imagine. It is a harmonic path, one that arises from the soul's own longing to evolve, to express, to serve. The book reveals that souls do not return because they must. They return because something within them burns with the desire to continue the great unfolding of consciousness through experience. And yet, not all returns are to Earth. Some souls choose realms unknown to the human mind, frequencies that express other dimensions of being. Others remain in realms of subtle service, guiding, healing, or weaving energies that sustain the balance between planes. But those who feel the Earth still pulsing in their field, they return with intention. And before that return, they enter a space the book names the Hall of Intention. Again, not a place, but a vibrational realm where the soul collaborates with unseen intelligences to shape its next path. Here, themes emerge, not details. A soul does not choose the color of its eyes or the city of its birth. It chooses the essence of its journey. Courage, compassion, liberation, surrender. These become the codes that magnetize the circumstances to come. From this spiral, the soul flows forward, not as a repetition, but as an expansion. Every life is a new angle of perception, a new note in the symphony of awakening. And so the great paradox is revealed. We return not to escape death, but to deepen life. As the soul prepares to re-enter form or take on new dimensions of service, it is never alone. Surrounding it, or rather interwoven with its vibration, are presences that have walked beside it across lifetimes. The book calls them the luminous ones, though others might name them guides, elders, or simply love in form. These beings are not superior, they are not masters. They are companions in evolution, beings who chose long ago to remain in the unseen so others might find their way through density. Their wisdom is not instructional, it is vibrational. Their messages are felt in the quiet between thoughts, in the symbols of dreams, in the sudden knowing that cannot be explained. They assist not by telling the soul what to do, but by holding the clarity of its original intention. They remind gently through resonance. In the spaces between incarnation, this relationship is more visible. The soul recognizes their frequencies instantly, like remembering a scent from childhood that opens forgotten doors. And beyond these guides, the book whispers of something rarer still, the hidden counsel. Not hidden by secrecy, but by subtlety. Their presence is known only when the soul reaches a certain clarity of coherence. They do not appear, they reveal. The counsel does not decide, it witnesses. It holds the universal field of evolution, where each soul's journey is seen not as success or failure, but as movement, sacred, intricate, ever returning to wholeness. When a soul is called to a role that will ripple across many, it is here, in silence, that the alignment is affirmed. These encounters are not common. But when they occur, the soul remembers not only who it is, but what it is part of. To meet the counsel is to know, you are not a lone traveler. You are a strand in the living web of cosmic intention. While the soul journeys onward, expanding, resting, returning, something of it remains. Not in the body, not in the name, but in the vibrations it left woven into the lives it touched. The book calls these echoes energetic imprints that continue to breathe through memory, place, and emotion long after death. Every act of love generates an echo. Every forgiveness, every moment of presence, every time you truly saw another. These become living fields that remain active in the web of life. They influence, they inspire, sometimes silently, sometimes in dreams. Sometimes in the quiet feeling someone has when they walk into a room you once loved. These echoes are not ghosts, they are blessings. And yet, not all echoes are light. The book speaks with gentle honesty, unresolved pain, unspoken words, withheld truth. These too leave traces, not as curses but as incomplete threads, calling to be seen, felt, healed by those still in form. This is why in some homes, one feels sadness with no known source, or why a melody suddenly brings tears. The soul is gone, yet something speaks. The echo invites awareness, not fear. It asks us to feel what was left unfelt, to say what was left unsaid. In doing so, we release not just our own energy, but theirs. Some souls return briefly, not to haunt, but to assist in this resolution. Not all transitions are instant. Some require times, or what feels like time, to untangle. Our attention, our rituals, our remembrance become bridges. We are not only living our own path, we are helping others complete theirs. So even after death, a part of us continues, not trapped but echoing, asking only to be heard with the heart. What then will be your echo? What frequency will you leave behind in the fields of the living? In the end, which is not an end, there remains only one truth. We are light, not metaphorically, but literally, a subtle, intelligent radiance that cannot be destroyed. This light is not born with the body, nor extinguished by its absence. It moves through the body like music through an instrument. And when the body falls silent, the music continues. The mysterious book closes with a final vision, not of afterlife landscapes or celestial hierarchies, but of stillness, infinite stillness. In this stillness, there is no identity, no story, no striving. And yet, it is not empty. It is fullness beyond measure. It is what many have called Source, the field, God. But words fracture what this presence is. Here the soul no longer seeks, it merges. It does not lose itself, it becomes more fully what it always was. There is no separation, no here or there, only being, pure, silent, awake. From this space, some souls choose to return, not because they must, but because love moves them, to hold a hand, to whisper truth into art, to stand in a darkened world and carry the frequency of light. These are the bodhisattvas, the wanderers, the ones who return not for themselves, but for us. And you, yes you, who read or hear these words, you carry that light now. You are not waiting to die to awaken. You are remembering while alive. This is the true gift of the book, not to inform, but to ignite. Not to explain death, but to remind you that within you burns something deathless. So ask yourself gently, what part of you is already beyond time? What within you knows, without proof, that it has always been? Let that part lead. Because death is not the end, it is the doorway through which the eternal turns inward and remembers itself as light. There is a silence beyond silence, not the absence of sound, but the presence of everything. A silence so full it hums. After all visions fade, after the echoes dissolve and the spirals complete, this silence remains. It is not reached, it reveals itself when all seeking ends. This is where the soul listens not to voices but to vibration, not to thoughts but to presence. In this sacred quiet you realize all questions dissolve into one. Who is the one that witnesses? And even that melts into stillness. The book ends here. Not because there is nothing more, but because words can go no further. What lies beyond can only be lived. Through deep feeling, through surrender, through the pulse of awareness itself. And perhaps this is the truest message, that the mystery of death is not separate from the mystery of life, that what awaits us has always been with us, in moments of awe, in sacred pauses, in the vastness behind your eyes when you truly see. So listen, not out there, but within. For in the end, the deepest truths are not spoken. They are remembered in silence.